Hello, and welcome to Sharp Love Story. Here we share powerful stories of love and the emotional journeys that lead to healing. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Let's explore the beauty and strength of human emotions together. He requested a divorce in front of everyone, assuming he'd come out on top. I stood there in the rain, 50 meters away from the ancient village on the steps. I quietly watched my fiancé Benjamin as he feted Jade, pendant-shaped like a lover's knot mouth to the charming and alluring Jade, who was dressed in a red wedding gown. Jade blushed as she took the jade pendant, but before she could take it off, Benjamin eagerly pulled her tightly into his embrace. The two embraced passionately, kissing amidst the cheers of their friends around them. They kissed for nearly 10 minutes, until Jade's legs were so weak she could barely stand. Only then did Benjamin stop, panting. The autumn wind brushed by, lifting the gauzy curtains of the ancient village. Only then did I see clearly, under the dim yellow light, that my family and friends were all there. And my younger brother Harrison, whom I once protected with my life, has now become the officiant of this wedding. He was wearing a traditional Chinese long gown, his heart and eyes filled with thoughts of his stepsister Jade. I completely forgot that back then my brother and I almost got killed by Jade and her mom at the internet addiction school. May my sister and brother-in-law be forever united in heart and enjoy a harmonious life for 100 years, Harrison exclaimed in blessing. As soon as he finished speaking, the villagers beside him ignited the fireworks that had been prepared in advance. Under the brilliant fireworks, Benjamin lifted Princess Jade into his arms. Seeing this scene, Harrison's excited emotions ignited to the extreme, and he shouted hoarsely, "The ceremony is complete. Take her to the bridal chamber." The suffocating loneliness of despair isolated the noise around me into a vacuum. I raised my hand and dialed Harrison's number. My younger brother, who had sworn to stand by my side forever, casually glanced and then raised his hand to hang up the phone. I did not pause and continued to dial Benjamin's number. The moment he realized it was me, his expression instantly turned cold. He initially intended to hang up, but after Jade said something, he impatiently pressed the connect button. I whispered, "Where are you?" Then, in front of everyone, he scoffed and mocked me. "Here to check up again? You're already pregnant and still can't behave? Maggie, are you really that desperate for love? Can't you live without a man? I told you long ago that I came to the ancient village with Jade for the newly discovered tomb at our museum. Only a disgusting woman with a filthy mind like you would always intertwine work with romantic affairs." Hurtful words drowned me like a tide, but the last trace of affection in my heart made me choke as I spoke. "But Benjamin, today is my birthday. You once promised me that no matter what happened, you would celebrate my birthday with me. So, even if your business trip is 1,000 kilometers away, I still choose to switch between more than 10 modes of transportation, walk 5 kilometers, and endure the fear of crossing the mountains and forests to find you. Until I was told by the villagers that there was no ancient tomb here at all. There was only a professor named Benjamin. Since half a year ago, I have been planning a traditional Chinese wedding with my beloved in an ancient village." Benjamin seemed to just remember this matter, and there was a brief silence on the other end of the phone. He wanted to say something else, but the phone was snatched away by Harrison. "Maggie, can you stop being so pathetic? Do you think everyone is like you, obsessed with female rivalry? I advise you to stop making a scene. If you delay Benjamin and the others' work progress, can you take responsibility for that? Stop being a fool and making others clean up your mess, all right?" After he hung up the phone, Jade leaned against Benjamin, her smile soft as she gently patted Harrison's head, coaxing him softly. "All right, you all know what kind of person Maggie is. Today is the most important day of my life. Be good and cheer up with those words," she managed to soothe Harrison. A group of people was bustling toward the wedding house. The lively crowd has dispersed, and under the lonely dark night, only I remain, like a clown that no one cares about. I opened my phone and scheduled an abortion. Then I turned and left. A heart that has been covered for 15 years, but still cannot be warmed. I no longer want it. It was already late at night when I returned to the city. After casually booking a hotel and freshening up, I fell into a deep sleep in a daze. Woken up in the early morning by the urgent ringing of the phone. The television station leader spoke with an anxious yet excited tone. "Maggie, I heard that the ancient village you are in experienced a 5.3 magnitude earthquake yesterday. Hurry and get some footage." He finished speaking without waiting for my response and hung up directly. I only felt mockery. Had I known it would be like this, I really shouldn't have come here. Resigned. I got out of bed and turned on my phone. I stumbled upon a new post from Jade on her moments. There was only one picture. Jade's slightly smaller and whiter hand was wrapped in Benjamin's large, bony hand. The couple's rings were worn on the ring fingers of both. She gazed at the faint scar on Benjamin's hand. My deadened heart still couldn't help but ache. At that time, 18-year-old Benjamin protected me from my abusive father, the wound pierced by a broken beer bottle. It was something I had always believed to be true, that he cared about my evidence. In the end, it was all just my own misplaced feelings. The last trace of affection in my heart has completely died. I opened my computer, quickly organized the interview materials, and then had my lawyer friend draft a divorce agreement. Returning to the ancient village once more, it was already in ruins. I set aside my personal emotions and, with a heavy heart filled with compassion, contacted rescue services for the affected crowd at the scene. For some reason, the consequences of this earthquake were particularly severe. Looking at the dynamite used for blasting and building near the newly constructed village, a bad suspicion arose in my heart. But the next second, I was kicked hard from behind. I was caught off guard, and my whole body fell onto the gravel of the shattered ground caused by the earthquake. My hands and face were instantly torn open in several places, exposing tender flesh. Harrison's voice rang out from behind. Furious. "Maggie, are you a dogskin plaster? You actually followed me all the way here to catch me cheating. Are you out of your mind?" It is unclear when it happened, but Harrison seems to have forgotten the tragic circumstances of our mother being forced to death by Jade's mother. He has long since become Jade's devoted admirer. I don't want a brother like this. I stood up in silence, brushing off the dust from my clothes. With a blank expression, I walked up to him and slapped him hard across the face. Harrison turned his head, shocked as he looked at me. He never expected that I would actually fight back this time. Before he could react, I stared at him with a face full of disgust and said, "Don't get ahead of yourself. Since you like Jade so much, just obediently be her dog. This slap is a repayment to you, and from now on, we have nothing to do with each other." Ignoring his angry gaze, she turned around and continued the interview. Not far away, Benjamin also held the pale-faced Jade close. A hint of guilt flashed across his face as he began to explain to me, "Maggie, I forgot to wish you a happy birthday last night. Once I finish the excavation work here, I'll go back and celebrate your birthday properly." I calmly shifted my gaze away from the intertwined fingers of him and Jade, shaking my head nonchalantly. No need. My calm reaction left the three people present momentarily stunned. Harrison, who had followed behind, scoffed, "Maggie, what are you pretending this time? Stop acting. You're pregnant, and you still plan to use that old trick of feigned indifference? Ridiculous. Let me tell you, even if you're pregnant, you're still not worthy of kneeling down to serve Sister Jade. He is still the same, unable to recognize his own situation." Seeing my expression still cold, Benjamin was also angry. He furrowed his brows and reproached me in a low voice. "Maggie, it's one thing for you to disrupt my normal work by following me, but now you're here throwing a tantrum? My patience is limited. Jade's illness requires peace and quiet, and your presence will only affect her mood. You need to get back home right now," he said as he grabbed my hand, trying to force me away from the scene. But unexpectedly, the aftershocks began the next second. Both Benjamin and Harrison lunged toward Jade, who was standing in the open space almost simultaneously. Benjamin instinctively pushed me to the ground, but he clearly saw that there was a fallen concrete utility pole behind me. The utility pole struck my left leg with great force. I lost consciousness completely in the excruciating pain. When I woke up again, I was already lying in the hospital with my left leg in a cast. The bedside was empty. When the nurse saw me wake up, she came over to remove the 4-needle, her tone filled with concern. Fortunately, it was your leg that was injured. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to keep your child. I calmly looked at the ceiling and said softly, "There's no need to keep the child. Could you please help me schedule an abortion?" It was only when the nurse wheeled me out of the ward that I realized it was the village chief who had brought me to the hospital. Benjamin only sent me a message. Jade fainted from being scared by her injured leg. I took her back to the capital for treatment. He applied for a rescue helicopter overnight with Harrison to escort Jade back to the capital. As for my injury, he didn't care at all. The dense despair in my heart has turned into a dull ache, yet it still makes even breathing painful. The abortion was scheduled for 3 hours later. Taking advantage of this gap, my lawyer friend and I finalized the divorce agreement. I exited the chat log and saw that in the family group, my dad, Harrison, and Benjamin were taking turns sending red envelopes to Jade. Looking at the hurried birds flying past the window, a self-mocking smile curled at the corners of my lips. It turns out they all remembered Jade's birthday. My dad transferred $52,000, leaving a message. "Happy birthday, Jade baby." Harrison transferred $100,000, leaving a message. "May my dearest sister be forever happy." Benjamin directly sent a screenshot of a bank transfer for $520,000 with a message. "No matter what the future holds, I will only ever love Jade." I silently admired this warm scene, then directly exited the group chat. The moment she left the group chat, Benjamin called, starting with sarcasm, "Maggie, what are you going crazy about again? You just can't stand us being good to Jade, can you? Back in high school, you slandered her and her mom for killing your mother. But what's the truth? Your dad told me long ago that your mom had mental issues. She committed suicide. Then you went on to say Jade's mother tricked you and Harrison into some rehab for internet addiction." Huh. He did not hide the contempt and disgust in his tone at all. "I had someone investigate it long ago. That school doesn't exist at all. Harrison said you tricked him into an abandoned school and then caused him to hit his head and lose his memory. In the end, it was Jade who took care of him for a month." It's like finally finding an outlet for his frustration. Benjamin cursed me madly. "I never wanted to marry you at all. If it weren't for Jade's kindness, worrying that you might do something foolish, I wouldn't have gone into that hotel that night and drunk that spiked drink you prepared." I listened in silence the whole time, when a mechanical girl suddenly interrupted Benjamin. "Please have patient number 037, Maggie, come to the entrance of the abortion surgery room." Benjamin suddenly fell silent, his breathing quickening. "Are you going to have an abortion?" I couldn't understand why, but I detected a hint of disbelief in his words. I was about to speak when I heard Jade's light laughter on the other end of the phone. "Benjamin, you're really foolish. How could Maggie possibly bear to have an abortion when she cares so much about you and your child?" Hearing this, Benjamin's tone instantly turned cold. "You're right, Maggie, you really disappoint me. I never expected that, being born of the same father, you could be so malicious. You went to any lengths to marry me, and now you want to use the child to threaten me? Let me tell you, I won't fall for that. If you continue to act unreasonable, then let's get a divorce." He finished speaking, waiting proudly for me to cry out for an apology and beg for mercy. But unexpectedly, I remained calm for a few seconds, then sighed as if relieved and said, "All right, then see you at the Civil Affairs Bureau the day after tomorrow." I hung up the phone and turned to walk into the crowded room until I finished the surgery and returned to the capital. Benjamin never called again. He seemed to think that I was just being stubborn. She continuously posted several moments on her social media. They included trying on wedding dresses with Jade, taking wedding photos, and even choosing gold. I completely ignored it, then returned to the television station and applied to join the Geological Exploration Research Team filming a documentary in Antarctica. By the way, the materials that the village chief secretly slipped into my bag when he took me to the hospital that day were reported to the news channel. After seeing the truth behind that earthquake, the last trace of affection I had for Benjamin vanished from my heart, leaving only disgust. After doing all this, I returned to the small apartment where I lived after graduation. I packed up all the cheap gifts that Benjamin had given me over the past 15 years. Along with the divorce agreement, I sent a USB drive containing the inside information I had gathered over the years about schools that treat internet addiction to the wedding venue. Harrison was sent to a rehabilitation center for internet addiction at a young age, and due to the torment he endured, he developed post-traumatic stress disorder and forgot everything. Over the years, I have been afraid to say more in order not to provoke him. Now that I think about it, it really doesn't matter at all. Before boarding, I blocked all contact with Benjamin and Harrison. I took out my SIM card, broke it, and threw it in the trash. From this moment on, I have no ties to my past. At the wedding venue, Benjamin felt an inexplicable flutter in his heart. It could be the reason for Jade's illness. Late-stage lung cancer. Every time he thought of the girl as pure as a fairy, who would wither away in the future, Benjamin could only feel suffocated. He has thought more than once, why is it not Maggie who got this illness? She was so malicious that her death is not a loss. Harrison has mentioned more than once, Jade is such a good girl. It would have been better if that wretched Maggie had died. Thinking of this, Benjamin's resentment towards Maggie deepened. The wedding is about to start, and Maggie hasn't arrived yet. She's really taking advantage of her pregnancy. Thinking of this, he dialed a number he hadn't called in a long time, only to find that he had been blocked. Harrison saw this and dialed Maggie's number, only to find that he had also been blocked. This crazy woman. Harrison cursed as he began to contact others who knew Maggie. Benjamin cursed in a low voice. If it weren't for fulfilling Jade's dream, I wouldn't marry a woman like Maggie. It's already a breach of my bottom line to agree to marry her, and she dares to run away from the wedding? Just wait until I find her. See if I don't. Excuse me, which one is Mr. Benjamin and Mr. Harrison? The courier's inquiry interrupted them. This is a package from Ms. Maggie for you. Please sign for it. After signing his name, Benjamin casually opened the package, and on top was a divorce agreement. He scoffed, not taking it seriously, and casually tossed it to the ground, but the next second, when he saw the abortion surgery slip underneath, he froze. No. This can't be happening, Benjamin said, filled with doubt. As if to reassure himself, he forced himself to open a small wooden box inside. But as soon as it was opened, the expression on his face completely froze. A small, curled-up child's skeleton lay quietly in the box. Bang! Benjamin's pupils dilated suddenly, and he accidentally knocked over the box. Harrison's expression also changed, but compared to Benjamin's days, he was more angry. That damn Maggie, ruining a perfectly good day. That, by the way, gentleman Ms. Maggie specifically instructed that the USB drive in the box can tell you the truth about the past. The courier's expression was calm, and after saying this, he turned and left. Benjamin was still a bit dazed, as if he hadn't quite heard what the delivery person was saying. Harrison scoffed, then tossed the box onto the cleaning cart beside him. Playing tricks? What game is Maggie trying to pull this time? He pulled the distracted Benjamin over and winked at him. Brother-in-law, since Maggie isn't coming, why don't you just marry Jade today? After all, the one you love is her, and the wedding dress and ring were designed according to her measurements. A single word, Jade, brought Benjamin back to his senses. He forced a smile and nodded, his gaze retracting from the delivery box. Following Harrison, they arrived at the hotel room where Jade was resting. Before coming, Harrison specifically asked Benjamin to buy a bouquet of flowers, not telling anyone, planning to give Jade a surprise. As soon as the two of them reached the door of the room, they heard the sound of a lighter. The door of the room was left ajar, and in Benjamin's memory, the delicate and innocent Jade, who had lung cancer, was smoking a cigarette. And on the sofa in front of her, Meng's father and Jade's mother looked extremely pleased. Especially Jade's mother, who was counting the betrothal money given by Benjamin. Our Jade darling is so clever, pretending to have lung cancer and fooling that stupid man Benjamin completely. Ha ha, he's a professor and I can't even tell if a diagnosis is real or fake. Jade's mother spoke with a sharp and biting tone. She exchanged a glance with my father and smeared. Benjamin is also cheap. He ignores Maggie, who has liked him for 15 years, and insists on clinging to my daughter instead. TSK. It must be my daughter's charm that draws him in. My dad took a sip of the red wine and arrogantly commented, Maggie is unfortunate, just like her mother, a worthless person who can't enjoy her blessings. If her mom had obediently handed over the inheritance back then, she wouldn't have been tormented to the point of jumping off a building. We wouldn't have to keep pretending to placate that fool Harrison. Jade rolled her eyes impatiently, her tone dripping with disdain. Why hasn't that Maggie shown up yet? If she dares to run away from the wedding, just watch me kill her. And that child in her belly, if it weren't for the fact that I can't have kids, what right does she have to marry Benjamin? Once they're married, you all find a chance to send her off to that rehab school and take care of her. This time, let's rename it the School of Virtue for Women. I'll cry in front of Benjamin, saying Maggie is bullying me, and he'll definitely believe it. After that, we'll use the child Maggie has to claim the inheritance left by her mother. The three of them finished their loud plotting and burst into laughter, completely oblivious to the fact that the faces of the two people behind the door had turned as dark as a pot's bottom. Boom! The door was kicked down with great force. Benjamin's face turned pale with anger, his whole body trembling. His expression was as dark as ink as he coldly said, Have you all been lying to us this whole time? Harrison also put away his usual gentleness and politeness in front of them, leaving only resentment. My mom was really killed by you. The Jade family was stunned. Especially Jade, flustered, extinguished the cigarette, and squeezed out 2 tears to show weakness to Benjamin. Benjamin, you heard wrong. That just now was what Maggie threatened us with. She said if we didn't say it like this, she would hit the child. You shameless person. How dare you mention Maggie? Benjamin was furious and kicked Jade over. He trembled with anger, and scenes from the past 10 years flashed before his eyes like a revolving lantern. Maggie, his Maggie, had always been innocent. 15 years. That Jade has been slandering his Maggie all this time. And how many times has he hurt Maggie because of it? Benjamin couldn't bear to think. Just the thought of the possible answer nearly broke his heart. Jade was stunned. In a flurry, she tried to crawl out, but Benjamin grabbed her hair and pulled her back. Since you want to get lung cancer, then experience the pain that comes with it. Benjamin grinned as he smashed the bottle of red wine beside him against Jade's head, the sharp shards of glass tearing into Jade's beautiful face. She held her face and screamed in agony. Jade's mother was furious, shouting wildly, I'm going to call the police and have you arrested. You murderers. Our Jade has always been innocent. It's you two who have harmed Maggie. What does this have to do with us? Benjamin shuddered when he heard that, then nodded with a wry smile. Yes, we two beasts have always been the ones bullying Maggie. But even so, his eyes suddenly flashed with ferocity. We will drag you down to hell too. Harrison was also panting as he rushed back with the cardboard box that had originally been thrown away. Facing the scene where Jade's mother and Meng's father stubbornly insisted on their innocence, Harrison self-deprecatingly raised the USB drive and painfully said, I remember now, my sister has been protecting me all along, after seeing the name of the school on the USB drive. Jade's family was horrified. 6 months later, I stood on the Antarctic ice sheet, quietly following the photographer as we documented the migration path of the emperor penguins. After finishing the day's work, returned to the base. I received a video call from my boss across the ocean. Maggie, the Antarctic project is coming to an end. When are you coming back? I took off my snow-blocking goggles and chuckled lightly. Tomorrow, my mother's Memorial Day is coming up next month. I need to go back and pay my respects. All right. The case you reported to your superiors about the unauthorized excavation of the mountain in the ancient village has caused quite a stir. The suspect has already been arrested and sentenced to 3 years. I remember him looking a bit familiar, named Benjamin. Seems like the same name as your ex-fiancé, and he's a history professor too, doing something like this. I shook my head and said flatly, I don't know this person. After exchanging a few pleasantries with the leader, I hung up the phone. After packing my luggage and exchanging pleasantries with my companions, I boarded the cruise ship back to my homeland. After a month of sailing at sea, I returned to the capital city. In these 6 months in Antarctica, I have long let go of the past. From now on, I, Maggie, will live only for myself. Rented a house near the television station. The next day, I returned to the television station and handed over my work to my colleagues. I bought a bouquet of flowers to the cemetery. However, in front of my mother's gravestone, I saw the stone clean spotless, already adorned with fresh flowers and the sweets my mom loved to eat when she was alive. Looking at the family photo of me, Harrison, and Mom affixed to the tombstone, I lowered my gaze, my expression calm. I put down the flowers and turned around, only to see Harrison standing behind me. After not seeing him for half a year, he had lost a lot of weight, and the once spirited figure seemed to have been shattered, leaving only a frail shell. He didn't dare to meet my gaze, his expression timid and ingratiating. "Sister, you're back." His voice was hoarse, laced with a desire to please and an undeniable guilt. He rubbed the frayed hem of his faded short-sleeved shirt and forced a smile. "The house where Mom lived before she passed is now empty. Benjamin. He drove those three away before he went in. Mom's inheritance hasn't been swallowed up. It's still under your name." He became more and more excited as he spoke, unable to help but smile and look up, but upon seeing my still indifferent expression, tears suddenly fell. "Sister, I only have you left. I know I was wrong. In the past, I was a beast and you didn't even know. In the 6 months you've been gone, I've almost gone crazy." He covered his face and cried out loudly, tears dripping from his chin, soaking his collar. "I beg you, please don't abandon me." A man nearly 6 feet tall, yet he knelt before me in tears, clutching my legs, begging for my forgiveness. I sighed helplessly and gently pushed him away, but back then, I was just one person. Didn't you all hate me to the extreme, wishing I would die on the spot? Harrison, I am human. My heart is made of flesh. Ask yourself, do the hurts you inflicted on me for Jade in the past deserve my forgiveness? Just a single sentence turned his face pale. He trembled all over, collapsing to the ground, his sunken eyes filled only with despair and regret. He began to nervously tear at his dry, peeling lips, not stopping until they bled profusely. I was too lazy to continue entangling with him, but I heard his persistent tone from behind. "It's okay, sister. You are my only family now. You don't have to forgive me. I will always protect you. Even if it means dying." He spoke with certainty, just as he had when he promised to protect Jade. But I no longer care. Back at the rented place, I tidied up casually. The next day, I went out again to attend my best friend's wedding. My best friend has been my close companion since high school. At that time, the whole class was brainwashed by Jade to isolate me, and only she played with me. In the past 2 days since returning home, I have heard from various people about Jade, her mother, and my father's fate. My dad married my mom, this young lady, when he was poor. After my grandparents passed away, he began to oppress and torment my mother in various ways. When Harrison was 5 years old, my mother had already been tormented into suffering from severe depression. Jade's mother made her grand appearance at that moment. After that day, my dad never came home again. During the holidays, the three of us, my mother, Jade, and I, would always be met with my dad's indifference and Jade's mother's cold sarcasm. After holding on for 5 years for me and Harrison, my mom jumped off a building on my 17th birthday, provoked by Jade's mother. Because my dad claims that Jade is sick and needs my bone marrow, my mother was forced into a corner. She directly transferred all her assets to my name and told my dad that as long as I was alive, they wouldn't get a single cent. My dad was furious. The next day, he sent me and Harrison to a school for internet addiction. If I hadn't desperately escaped and threatened him with evidence to call the police, my dad would have only then realized to hold back a little. Later, he discovered that he had lost his ability to procreate. He was left with only his son Harrison. It was then that he stopped setting his sights on Harrison. But he is not a businessman. Over the course of more than 10 years, he has lost quite a bit. So he was filled with thoughts and visions of the inheritance my mother left me. They can't kill me, but as long as I marry the man who loves Jade, there will still be an heir to the inheritance. Then this money will naturally belong to them as well. Jade is not a good thing either. Over the years, in order to hook a rich second generation, she has been sent abroad by them. But after being played out, I lost my ability to bear children. I could only use lung cancer as a cover to trick Benjamin into getting a marriage certificate and having a child with me first. But they never expected that Benjamin would accidentally learn the truth. My best friend told me. 6 months ago, I disappeared at the wedding. Benjamin went crazy. After learning the truth, he severely injured Jade, leaving her unconscious with her face mutilated. Jade's mother and my dad still wanted to shout for him to be imprisoned. As a result, Benjamin directly exposed all the various false accounts and bribery issues of my dad's company over the years. Moreover, the idea of proposing to Jade by building an ancient village was also suggested by my dad. He colluded with local unscrupulous merchants, intending to take the opportunity to mine privately. When this happened, my dad was completely stunned. He ran away in the middle of the night, leaving behind his wife and children. Originally, Jade's mother, who was so proud in front of my mom, believing she was the true love, woke up one day to find that the villa had been completely emptied. At that moment, I was flustered, both angry and annoyed. But for all these years, she has been a canary raised by my dad with no work skills at all. Jade's medical expenses require another 100,000 or so. With no other options, she can only turn to her old lovers from her youth for help. But when she was young, she relied on her beauty to interfere with many married men. Now, in her fallen state, before she could even open her mouth to ask for help, she was instead met with overwhelming torment and humiliation. In the end, not only did she fail to borrow any money, but she also nearly fell victim to human traffickers. There was no way out. She could only force Benjamin to pay, but Benjamin was determined to drag her whole family down with him. On the day of the incident, he unconditionally transferred all his assets to my name. When the police caught him, Benjamin was a broke man. Jade's mother, at her wit's end, went mad. She never really loved her daughter much anyway and simply gave up on treatment. She dragged the injured Jade back home. Jade, waking up to find herself disfigured, cannot accept this reality. Jade's mother was cursed for being selfish and disgusting, and as a result, during the argument between mother and daughter, Jade accidentally pushed her mother off the 13th floor balcony. She fell to her death. Since then, Jade went crazy. She didn't even wear clothes, wandering around the neighborhood all day, picking up trash to eat. In the end, it was the community property management that couldn't stand it any longer. They draped a coat over her and, together with the police, sent her to a mental hospital. And my dad thought that by running away, everything would be just fine. But he didn't know that the unscrupulous businessman he was getting involved with had been in prison before. After the incident, he forced my dad to pay back the money. As a result, my dad blocked me. The unscrupulous merchant couldn't swallow this anger. He directly hired a private detective to find out the address where my dad was hiding. They found about 10 strong men to capture my dad and sold him to the high seas. With scattered bits of organ money, I reclaimed the compensation my dad owed him. But before the money could even get warm, it was taken away in one fell swoop by the police, who had been keeping an eye on him for a long time. Benjamin, who had been providing clues to the police all along, was ultimately sentenced to 3 years in prison. After saying all this, my best friend sighed and said earnestly, "So, one shouldn't do bad things. See, the retribution has come." I smiled and took a bite of the mousse, agreeing. Indeed, she looked at me so calmly and gossiped, "You have no idea. Benjamin went crazy looking for you that day, asking everyone who knows you. When he found out you went to Antarctica, he turned gray overnight. TSK, all scumbags are like this. They don't cherish what they have until it's gone, and then they regret it." I nodded and smeared. "Maybe it's just cheap. But don't mention him in front of me anymore. It's bad luck. Benjamin is my mother's student. His family is not well off, but he has excellent grades and is very talented in calligraphy. My mother is a direct disciple of a calligraphy master, and during a calligraphy competition, she recognized Benjamin's talent. She took him on as her apprentice and even supported him all the way through high school. At that time, Benjamin was the top student and the heartthrob of the school. I had a crush on him.
He took care of me.
Benjamin knows about Jade and her mom interfering in my mom's marriage. At first, he particularly disliked Jade and would stand up for me. They would also stand up and accuse Jade when I was being bullied. However, this kind of favoritism changed completely after the two of them attended a summer camp together. I was originally going to go too, but just before departure, I inexplicably developed an allergy and my fever soared to 40 degrees. I could only be hospitalized. A month after the summer camp ended, I happily went to the airport to pick up Benjamin, only to find that the look in his eyes when he saw me and my mom was filled with nothing but disgust and disdain. In the triumphant gaze of Jade, Benjamin wrapped his coat around her and said with concern, "Jade, take care of yourself. Don't be afraid. I will be here for you." My heart and eyes filled with anticipation, shattered just like that. The green light turned on. The vehicles behind me blared their horns, pulling me back from my memories and erasing the last trace of emotion I held for Benjamin. I drove forward. The sun shone brightly ahead, just like my future life. 3 years later, I participated in the global documentary competition as a gold medal winner. The match is over. I signed autographs for the fans who came to congratulate me one by one. In these 3 years, I have continued to dedicate myself to charity work and documentary filmmaking. I have almost traveled around the entire world with my colleagues, documenting a large number of endangered species. After finishing work, it was already late at night. When I returned to the villa in the city center, I was so tired that I could barely keep my eyes open. But when she saw a man standing in front of the yard at her doorstep, she suddenly tightened her grip on the self-defense stun baton in her hand. The thrilling experiences I've had overseas over the years have made me instinctively wary of any stranger. But unexpectedly, the streetlights suddenly lit up. The person heard the movement and turned around. This time I saw clearly. It was Benjamin, who had already been released from prison. He has a buzz cut. His handsome face is missing one eye. His cheeks are sunken, and his brow is fractured, as if he has been injured before. Even his left leg is lame, causing him to stand at an angle. He seemed to realize that he and I were no longer people from the same world. "Maggie," he called softly, his voice hoarse and deep, filled with an endless sense of guilt. I didn't say anything, calmly looking at him. Benjamin seemed to anticipate my reaction. He swallowed hard and pulled a gold pendant from his pocket. It was a small pig-shaped gold pendant. "If my child can be born, it will be a pig." Benjamin's rough fingertips rubbed against the gold pendant, and he chuckled to himself. "I know I shouldn't be giving you this gift, but baby, I do like you. I'm a beast, and in this lifetime, I can never repay what I owe you. Before I went in, I bought a plot for you. This is what I earned after getting out. Money made from working on the construction site, clean money. Maggie, I don't ask for your forgiveness, only that you take good care of yourself for the rest of your life." He suddenly coughed violently twice, and when he looked up again, blood was seeping from the corner of his mouth. He casually raised his hand to wipe it away, his voice very soft. "It's really karma," the doctor said. "I only have 3 months to live late-stage lung cancer." He finished speaking and gently placed the gold pendant in the mailbox in the courtyard. Then, rubbing his hands together, he looked at me almost pleadingly. "Can I ask you one thing? After I die, will you bury my ashes and the baby's ashes together?" The harm he caused me in the past was truly too deep. I still can't reconcile with him calmly. He seemed to realize it too. His eyes reddened, and tears of regret welled up. He no longer spoke. The tall figure instantly hunched over, like an old, worn-out flatboat. He staggered away, turning to leave. Under the dusk streetlight, his tall, thin figure was stretched longer and longer until it disappeared around the corner. I turned around and left with the bag in my hand. And that gold pendant was casually thrown into the trash can by me. 3 months later, I had just finished another big project. Celebrating with friends during a break, I received a call from the funeral home. They asked me if it was convenient to take the ashes. I gazed at the plain azure surface of a lake outside the window and chuckled lightly, refusing. "You might as well just pour it down the drain." Then, he hung up the phone directly. The last stain in his life was erased. It felt easy and satisfying.